Every house, every king, and every battle has its own truth. But there are stories older than crowns, darker than the night, and more dangerous than any blade. They were never written in books. They were whispered to fire, to the trees, and to the dead gods. And today, we dare to uncover one of them. The rain fell in silver sheets upon the blackened towers of Dragonstone, whispering against the stone like ghostly fingers tracing old wounds. The sea below crashed and roared, its fury matched only by the storm in Princess Rhaena Targaryen's heart. She stood upon the high parapet, her silver-gold hair whipping in the wind, her violet eyes fixed upon the dark horizon. Once, this had been the home of dragons. Now, it was a tomb. It had been 7 years since the dance. 7 years since brother fought sister, dragon tore dragon, and the skies themselves burned red with the ruin of her house. The great beasts were gone now, dead or dying, their bones bleaching in the salt air. Even the fires in the Dragonmont seemed to flicker less brightly. And with each passing day, Rhaena felt her family's power waning, its pride curdling into bitterness and fear. She had been a child when her mother, Queen Rhaenyra, was devoured by Sunfire, her half-brother Aegon's dragon. A child when her uncles, cousins, and sworn protectors died one by one. But she remembered every face, every scream, every betrayal. The past clung to her like ash that could not be washed away. Now, in King's Landing, the Iron Throne belonged to Aegon the Younger, Aegon III, her cousin, a boy haunted by dragons and ghosts who ruled with the emptiness of a heart too scarred to feel. The small folk called him the Dragonbane and whispered that no dragon would ever fly again while he lived. Yet rumors had begun to stir. In the ports of the Stepstones, in the taverns of Storm's End, and even among the blackened cliffs of Driftmark, sailors spoke of strange lights in the sky, of shadows with wings gliding above the sea, of fire in the night. At first, Rhaena dismissed the tales as drunkards' dreams. But then came the letter. It arrived in the dead of night, sealed with no sigil, the parchment smelling faintly of smoke and blood. Its words were written in a hand she did not know. The blood of the dragon still burns beneath the mountain. Come before the next moon wanes, or all that remains of your house will perish. No signature, no direction save one, an old map drawn upon the back, marking a path through the Stormlands to the ruins of Summerhall. Summerhall. The name alone sent a chill down her spine. That accursed palace where so many of her kin had met their ends, burned or broken in the mad pursuit of rekindling dragonfire. And yet, what if the letter was true? What if there was something left? She could not trust the court. Lord Corlys Velaryon, old as the sea itself, urged her to stay hidden. The hand of the king, Sir Marston Waters, watched her like a hawk, suspicious of any Targaryen who still dreamed of dragons. Even her cousin, King Aegon, would not hear talk of such things. But Rhaena had never been one to yield to fear. She summoned her sworn sword, Sir Harwin Hill, a knight of no great name, but one whose loyalty she had tested in both blood and silence. Once a sellsword, now her shadow. His face was lined and weather-worn, his eyes pale as the winter sea. "We ride at dawn," she told him, tossing the letter into the hearth. The parchment curled and blackened, sparks dancing like dying stars. "To where, princess?" he asked, his voice low and wary. "To Summerhall," she replied, "to the ashes of kings." By morning, the storm had not ceased, but the road called them nonetheless. Rhaena wore a plain cloak of gray, her dragon brooch hidden beneath. Sir Harwin rode beside her, his sword strapped across his back. The wind moaned through the trees as they made their way down the causeway from Dragonstone to the waiting ship, the Whispering Tide. The captain, a Taroshi with one eye and a smile too sharp to trust, took them across the narrow sea and back again to the shores of Westeros under cover of fog. They landed near Storm's End, where the cliffs rose like the spines of ancient beasts. There, Rhaena and Harwin continued on horseback, cloaked travelers moving through lands still scarred by war. Villages lay half-abandoned, the people weary and suspicious. They saw the faces of widows, the hands of hungry children, and the burned shells of keeps once loyal to the Blacks or the Greens. It no longer mattered which. One night, as they camped beside a brook, Harwin spoke at last. "Your Grace," he said, the title slipping from habit. "This road we ride is paved with ghosts. The Stormlands remember the war. The folk here would sell us both for a handful of copper if they knew who you were." "I know," she said softly. "But if there truly is dragon's blood still burning in this world, then I must find it. Our line cannot end with fear." He looked at her for a long while before nodding. "Then may the gods grant us more than ashes." The fire crackled between them, and Rhaena found her gaze drawn to the flames. For a heartbeat, she thought she saw something within. A coiled shape, flickering wings, eyes like molten gold. She blinked, and it was gone. The next morning, they reached the borderlands of the Stormlands. A hooded woman waited upon the road ahead, leaning on a gnarled staff. Her eyes were pale and clouded, as though she were blind. Yet when she spoke, her voice was clear as crystal. "You seek the fire beneath the mountain," she said. "But be warned, daughter of dragons. The fire you wake may not burn for you." Rhaena's hand went to her dagger. "Who are you?" The woman smiled faintly. "Only a servant of the flame. You may call me Isana." And with that, the wind shifted. The rain began to fall again, cold and sharp. It was then that Rhaena Targaryen realized her journey had truly begun. The road to Summerhall wound through the Stormlands like a scar carved by gods. The trees grew twisted and black from centuries of rain, their roots clutching the soaked earth like bones. Lightning flared on the horizon, illuminating the jagged outline of the old royal keep where once kings and princes had danced in firelight. Now it stood silent, half swallowed by ivy and ash. Rhaena Targaryen reined in her horse at the crest of the hill. Even from here, she could feel the heaviness of the place. The air itself seemed to hum with the ghosts of the past. "Summerhall," she whispered, "where fire devoured dreams." Sir Harwin Hill drew his cloak tighter against the wind. "A cursed place, princess. I've seen battlefields with more warmth in them. If this is where your letter leads, I'd sooner face a dragon's maw." Rhaena smiled faintly, though her heart was uneasy. "Then perhaps you'll have your wish." Isana, the blind hedge witch who had joined them 2 days past, moved silently behind them. Though her eyes were milky and unseeing, she rode with uncanny surety, her staff strapped across her back. She had spoken little since they met, but Rhaena had come to sense something ancient in her, a presence that stirred uneasily when night fell. Now she lifted her face toward the storm. "The fire sleeps still, but it remembers," she murmured. "The earth here drinks of dragon blood. You would do well not to wake what lies beneath without cause." Rhaena ignored the warning, though unease coiled in her belly. "We ride down." The gates of Summerhall were long gone, their iron hinges rusted to dust. They passed beneath an arch half collapsed, where the carvings of Targaryen dragons had been worn smooth by centuries of rain. Inside lay ruin. A courtyard choked by weeds, the remnants of a fountain dry and broken, and a great hall whose roof had long since fallen, leaving only a skeleton of scorched beams reaching toward the sky. The silence was suffocating. Even the rain seemed to fall more softly here. Rhaena dismounted and stepped through the charred threshold of the hall. Her boots sank into blackened ash. For a moment she imagined she could hear laughter, music, the echo of silk on stone. The remnants of joy turned to sorrow. "This is where they tried to birth dragons anew," she whispered. "And this is what they made instead." Isana's staff tapped softly against the stones. "You seek what they sought, fire from death. Be certain you know the price." "Do you?" Rhaena asked. The witch tilted her head. "I have paid it once. I will not pay it again." Before Rhaena could question her further, Harwin called from the far end of the hall. "Princess, you should see this." He stood beside what remained of the dais where once the Targaryens had held court. There, half buried beneath the rubble, a stone slab had been pried open. Beneath it yawned a narrow stairway, descending into darkness. "Someone's been here before us," Harwin said, drawing his sword. "Recently, too. The earth's still loose." Rhaena crouched beside him, brushing away the ash. Etched into the stone lip of the stair were faint markings, Valyrian runes, though twisted and uneven. "Fire calls to fire," she read. "Blood remembers blood." Without a word, she drew a torch from her pack, struck flint, and lit it. The flame flickered weakly in the damp air, but its glow revealed the first few steps of the stair spiraling down. Isana's expression tightened. "Whatever waits below is not meant for mortal eyes." "Then it is meant for dragon's blood," Rhaena said, and descended. The passage beneath Summerhall smelled of sulfur and damp stone. The walls were close, carved roughly by hand, and the air grew hotter the deeper they went. Rhaena could hear the faint hiss of water against unseen heat, as though the mountain itself still breathed. After what felt like an age, the tunnel opened into a cavern lit by a dull red glow. Lava pooled in cracks along the floor, casting rippling light across a chamber vast enough to swallow a castle. And there, in the center of it, lay a great iron brazier. Within it rested something small and round, smooth as glass, black as night, veined with veins of red light. A dragon egg. Rhaena's breath caught in her throat. For a moment, she could not move. It was smaller than those she had seen as a child, yet unmistakable. She stepped forward, reverent, trembling. "It cannot be," she whispered. Isana's voice came low behind her. "It is, and it should not be." Rhaena knelt beside the brazier. The egg pulsed faintly, as if with the rhythm of a heart. She reached out, then stopped, remembering the tales of Summerhall's doom. "Who brought this here?" she asked. "And why?" From the shadows near the cavern's edge, a voice answered, "To finish what our forebears could not." Steel sang as Harwin spun toward the sound. 3 figures emerged from the darkness, cloaked and armed. Their leader stepped forward, a tall man with hair pale as frost and eyes the color of amethyst. "By the gods," Harwin muttered. "Targaryen blood." The man smiled. "So you still know the look of your betters. I am Sir Arian Waters, bastard of Driftmark, son of one who served the true dragons in their hour of need." Rhaena rose slowly. "You carry my family's name, but none of its honor. What are you doing here?" Arian's smile widened. "Restoring what was lost. The realm is weak, princess. Your cousin sits his throne in fear of his own blood. But we will give the dragons back their fire, and you will help us." "I will do no such thing," she said. Arian's gaze flicked toward the egg. Then the fire will choose for you." He nodded to one of his companions, who stepped forward with a small vial. The man smashed it upon the brazier's edge. The contents flared, bright blue flame licking up around the egg. The cavern trembled. Rhianna felt the air itself grow heavy. The egg cracked once, twice, and a shriek split the silence, thin and piercing like the cry of something ancient being born. The fire flared white. Harwin seized Rhaena's arm, dragging her back as molten rock splashed across the floor. When the light dimmed, the egg was gone. In its place, coiled within the brazier, was a creature no larger than a hound, its scales shimmering black and crimson, its eyes twin embers. A dragon. Aerian's followers fell to their knees in awe. Rhaena could only stare, heart pounding, torn between wonder and terror. "It lives," she whispered. "Yes," Aerian said, "and it remembers its mother." The dragon's head turned toward Rhaena. For a heartbeat, she thought it would strike. Instead, it hissed softly, a sound that might almost have been recognition. And then the mountain groaned. The cavern walls shuddered. Lava burst from a fissure nearby, casting them all into chaos. "Out!" Harwin roared, pulling Rhaena toward the stairs. "Move!" Aerian's men scattered. Isana's voice rose above the din, chanting words in some forgotten tongue. Rhaena looked back once, just once, and saw the dragon spread its wings, its first breath of fire scorching the air. Then the ceiling came down, and all was flame. Smoke clung to Rhaena's lungs as she stumbled through the choking dark. The world roared around her. The hiss of molten stone, the crash of falling rock, the shriek of the newborn dragon echoing through the tunnels like thunder. Heat beat against her face as she ran, her hand locked in Harwin's, his grip iron strong, despite the weight of his armor. "Keep moving," he shouted, though the words were half lost in the din. The passage behind them collapsed in a rain of sparks and dust. Somewhere within the inferno, Aerian Waters and his followers screamed, but whether from pain or triumph, Rhaena could not tell. All she knew was the sound of the dragon's cry, piercing, hungry, alive. They burst into the ruined great hall of Summerhall, just as the storm above broke. Lightning splitting the heavens in a blinding white flash. The rain came down in torrents, hissing as it struck the scorched stone. Rhaena fell to her knees, gasping for breath, her hair plastered to her face. Isana emerged a moment later, soot-streaked but unburned, her pale eyes glowing faintly in the stormlight. "The fire is awake," she said, voice trembling not with fear, but with awe, "and it remembers the blood that called it forth." Rhaena rose shakily. What did he do? That man, Aerion, how did he hatch it?" "The rite was ancient," Isana murmured. "Forbidden. Dragon's fire bound to human blood. It should not have worked, not in this age. And yet," she turned toward the shattered doorway that led back into the mountain, "something in the world stirs again." A low rumble cut through the storm. The sound came from beneath them, deep and resonant, like the heartbeat of the earth itself. The ground trembled. Stones shifted beneath their boots. Harwin cursed. "We've no time for talk. If that mountain's waking, we'll be buried alive." Rhaena hesitated, torn between dread and fascination. Part of her longed to turn back, to see the creature again, to prove that dragons still lived. But the memory of that blinding fire, the sight of the egg cracking open, sent a cold shiver through her bones. She nodded once. "To the horses. Now." They fled into the rain. The storm raged with a fury fit to match the fire beneath the mountain, thunder rolling across the hills like war drums. When they reached the road, the ground behind them split, and a plume of smoke rose high into the air, black and red, curling like a dragon's breath. By the time they reached the forest's edge, Summerhall was lost to sight, swallowed by storm and shadow. They rode until dawn, the wind cold and sharp against their faces. When at last they stopped, it was in the shelter of an abandoned watchtower overlooking the Kingswood. Harwin built a small fire from damp wood, coaxing it to life with stubborn patience. Rhaena sat nearby, silent, staring into the flames. "I saw its eyes," she said finally. "They were not empty. They knew me." Harwin shook his head. "A beast knows its blood, Princess, but that doesn't make it kin. You said yourself, these creatures nearly ended your house. And yet without them, we are nothing," Rhaena replied quietly. "The realm remembers only our dragon's fire, not our wisdom. Without them, House Targaryen fades like a story half forgotten." Isana stirred beside the hearth, her expression unreadable. "You speak as those before you did. They too thought fire alone made them strong, and it consumed them all the same. Then why help me?" Rhaena demanded, eyes flashing. "Why come with us at all if you would have me forget what I am?" The witch's pale eyes met hers. "Because you must choose, Rhaena of House Targaryen. Fire may cleanse, or it may devour. Only the hand that wields it decides which." Rhaena said nothing. The storm had passed, but the air still tasted of ash. When dawn broke, a messenger found them. He came on a lathered horse bearing the sigil of House Velaryon, a silver seahorse upon a field of sea green. The man dismounted heavily, his face gray with exhaustion. "Princess Rhaena," he gasped, bowing low. "By order of Lord Corlys Velaryon, you are summoned to Driftmark. Urgently." "What has happened?" she asked. "The king," the messenger said. "King Aegon has taken ill. The maesters say it is poison." The words struck her like a blow. "Poison?" He nodded grimly. "The hand of the king has closed the Red Keep. No ravens fly. No one enters or leaves without his word. Lord Corlys believes treachery festers in the court, and he fears it may be tied to Summerhall." Rhaena exchanged a look with Harwin. He understood at once. "Arion," the knight said. "If he lives, he'll move against the crown, hatch a dragon, and every fool with Targaryen blood will crawl from the shadows to claim it." Rhaena's hands tightened on the hilt of her dagger. "Then we ride for Driftmark." Isana's voice was soft but sharp. "And what of the creature beneath the mountain?" Rhaena turned toward her, eyes fierce. "Let it live. For now." They reached the coast 2 nights later. Driftmark's great keep, high tide, rose from the sea mist like a silver mirage, its towers gleaming with salt-stained stone and pearl inlay. Lord Corlys Velaryon awaited them in the hall, old and bent but unbowed, his sea-blue cloak draped across thin shoulders. "Rhaena," he said, rising as she entered. "By the gods, child, I feared you dead. Rumors come from the Stormlands, fire in Summerhall, tremors felt as far as Storm's End. Tell me it is not true." Rhaena hesitated, but she saw the truth already reflected in his weary eyes. "It is true," she said. "A dragon hatched." The old man closed his eyes. "Then the age of peace is over." "What of the king?" she asked. Corlys's jaw tightened. "He lingers, but the poison is slow. The hand holds power in his stead, and he has begun purging the court. Any who speak the word dragon are imprisoned. Those of your blood who remain in King's Landing vanish by the day." Rhaena felt the floor tilt beneath her. "He means to destroy us, or control you," Corlys said. "If he learns you were in Summerhall, he will come for you. He will claim you are the one who unleashed this terror." Rhaena turned to Harwin. "Then we must move first. If a dragon lives, we can use it to protect the king, to prove our strength before the traitors take everything. The night looked grim, and if the beast cannot be controlled, then it will burn them before it burns us, Rhaena said, and her voice was ice. Corlys sighed, ancient sorrow clouding his gaze. You sound like your mother. Rhaena met his eyes steadily. Then let us hope I do not share her fate. That night, sleep would not come. She stood upon the balcony overlooking the sea, the moonlight silvering her hair. Far across the water, lightning flickered above the stormlands once more. For a moment, she thought she saw a shadow move through the clouds, a dark shape, vast and winged, soaring above the mountain's heart. Her pulse quickened. The dragon lived, and with its breath, the house of the dragon would rise or fall again. Dawn crept over Driftmark in pale gold, but the island lay restless beneath the calm. The sea was eerily still, as though holding its breath, and the gulls that circled the cliffs gave no cry. Within the great hall of high tide, Rhaena Targaryen broke her fast in silence, her thoughts heavy with the weight of what must come. Across from her, Sir Harwin Hill stood watchful as ever, his hand never far from the hilt of his sword. Isana sat beside the hearth, eyes closed, fingers tracing unseen sigils upon the air. She had not spoken since their arrival, though Rhaena could feel her presence pressing faintly against her mind, like a whisper carried by wind. When Lord Corlys entered, he was not alone. Behind him came 2 guards, and a man Rhaena had not seen before, a narrow-faced courier dressed in the livery of House Velaryon. His hands trembled as he bowed low. "My lord," he said to Corlys, "the ship Sea Wraith has returned from King's Landing. The Hand's banners fly above the Red Keep, and Sir Marston Waters names himself Protector of the Realm. The king's condition worsens by the day." Corlys's mouth tightened. "And the boy himself?" "Still alive, my lord, though some say the Meisters are not permitted near him. Only the Hand's own healers attend." Rhaena rose swiftly. "Then we must act before the boy dies and that viper seizes the throne outright." Corlys turned toward her. "And do what, child? March upon King's Landing with a few loyal men and a dream of dragons? The realm remembers too well the dance. It will not follow another Targaryen war." Rhaena's eyes flashed. "Then they will follow a queen." The old lord's expression darkened. "You speak of fire before you have learned to hold the flame." "I am the flame," she said quietly. "And if I must burn to save my blood, then so be it." Silence fell. Even the sea seemed to hush. At length, Corlys sighed. "You are your mother's daughter. Very well. If this madness must play out, then it shall. But you will need allies, not just courage." "I have them," Rhaena said, though her voice was softer now. "There are still those in the Stormlands who would remember the Blacks kindly, and others in the Reach who hate the Hand's rule." Corlys nodded slowly. "A few, perhaps, but the realm is weary of dragons. You must tread carefully, lest you rouse their fear before their loyalty." "I will tread where I must," she said, and left the hall. That night, beneath a blood-red moon, a ship slipped quietly from Driftmark's harbor. Its sails were black, its oars muffled with cloth. At its prow stood Rhaena, the sea wind tearing at her cloak. Beside her, Harwin adjusted his armor, eyes fixed upon the dark horizon. "Where do we sail?" he asked. "To Storm's End," she replied. "Lord Boros Baratheon once bent the knee to my mother. His son, young Lord Davin, may yet remember that oath." Harwin frowned. "And if he does not?" "Then we remind him that the dragons have returned." Isana emerged from below deck, her staff glowing faintly in the moonlight. You would wield the creature like a weapon before you understand its will. Dangerous folly. Perhaps, Rhaena said, her gaze distant. But the realm has known only cold for too long. It is time it remembers the heat of dragon fire. The voyage took 4 days. On the 3rd night, a strange light appeared far off across the sea, an ember burning within the clouds. The sailors whispered prayers to the mother and the warrior alike, their faces pale. Rhaena alone watched it with awe, her heart thundering in her chest. "It follows us," she murmured. Harwin's hand gripped the rail beside her. "No, it watches." When at last they reached the Stormlands, they found the coast ravaged by wind. Storm's End loomed above them like a fortress carved from night itself, its banners whipping in the gale. Lord Daven Baratheon received them with suspicion. He was young, broad-shouldered, with the stormy eyes of his line and little patience for ceremony. "Princess," he said, his tone curt, "I did not expect a Targaryen beneath my roof again so soon. The last left ashes in her wake." Rhaena inclined her head. "I come not as conqueror, but as kin to the realm. Treachery festers in King's Landing. Your king lies dying while his hand takes his crown." Daven snorted. "What king? The boy? He's Targaryen still, and that's reason enough for my people to curse his name. The dragons brought nothing but war to these lands. Yet your forebears swore fealty to ours," Rhaena said sharply. "Would you break that oath now?" The Lord's gaze hardened. "I would not break it, but I would not die for it either." Isana stepped forward, her voice low. "And what if the dragons have returned?" The hall grew still. Daven's eyes narrowed. "You lie." Rhaena drew something from her cloak, a shard of obsidian streaked with crimson veins. It pulsed faintly, alive with inner fire. "This was taken from Summerhall," she said, "from the heart of the mountain where the last dragons were said to die. But one did not. One hatched." A murmur rippled through the chamber. Daven stared at the fragment, his jaw tightening. If that's true, it means ruin, not salvation. "Or both," Rhaena said. "Help me, and we can guide the flame. Deny me, and it will consume us all." The Lord hesitated. Then, slowly, he nodded. "You will have shelter for the night. No more. We speak again when the storm passes." That evening, as the rain lashed against the walls, Rhaena stood alone upon the battlements. The sea raged below, white foam gleaming like fangs. Somewhere beyond that darkness, she knew, the dragon stirred. She closed her eyes. For a heartbeat, she could feel it. A faint pull at the edge of her mind, a heat in her blood that was not her own. When she opened them again, Isana was beside her. "It calls to you," the witch said softly. "Yes," Rhaena whispered. "It knows my blood. It knows your fear," Isana replied. "Do not mistake the two." Lightning flared across the sky. For an instant, Rhaena saw it there. Wings stretched against the storm, scales gleaming like molten glass. It wheeled once above the cliffs and vanished into the clouds. She felt its cry deep within her chest, a tremor that left her trembling. Harwin found her moments later, his face pale. The guards saw it too. They're terrified. The Lord will think this a curse. "Then let him," she said, turning from the storm. "A curse may yet be the sharpest weapon we wield." By dawn, the castle was alive with whispers. Servants swore they had seen fire in the clouds. Sailors spoke of wings over the sea. Lord Daven summoned Rhaena once more to his hall, anger and fear mingling in his eyes. "You've brought doom to my keep," he said. "Whatever beast you've woken, send it back to the pit it came from." Rhaena faced him calmly. You cannot banish what you cannot command, but you can stand beside it or burn beneath it. His fists clenched. You think to threaten me? I think to warn you, she said. The fire is awake, and the realm will soon tremble. Choose now whether Storm's End will face the storm or be drowned by it. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he turned sharply away. Go, before I change my mind. Rhaena inclined her head and left, her cloak sweeping behind her. Outside, the wind howled and the sea thundered, but above it all, faint and distant, came a cry that made her blood sing. The dragon was coming, and with it, so too came destiny. The storm passed in the night, but its fury lingered in the hearts of men. By morning, the walls of Storm's End still dripped with rain, and the sea below churned like boiling pitch. Rhaena Targaryen stood at the eastern window of her chamber, watching the clouds thin into tatters of gray. She had not slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw wings in the dark, the flash of fire against the rain, and felt again that deep thrum of power that bound her blood to something vast and ancient. Harwin entered quietly, a damp cloak thrown over his shoulders. The men are restless, he said. They whisper that you summoned the beast. She turned, her face pale but steady. Let them whisper. Fear keeps men from doing foolish things. For now, that serves us. I'd rather have swords at our side than fearful tongues, Harwin muttered. Lord Davin will not keep you long. He sent a raven north. To who, I couldn't learn. To the Hand, perhaps, Rhaena said. If so, we must move before word spreads. She fastened her cloak, the black silk gleaming faintly in the dim light. Isana says the dragon moves east, toward the Kingswood. Harwin frowned. How could she know that? She feels it, Rhaena said simply. As I do. The bond grows stronger. He said nothing, but she saw the unease in his eyes. He had seen men follow prophecies before, seen how they ended. They left Storm's End by noon. Lord Davin offered neither farewell nor escort. His gates opened to them as if to a pestilence, and the guards averted their eyes. Behind them, the castle loomed black and silent against the clearing sky. The road through the Kingswood was quiet, broken only by the call of crows. Isana walked beside Rhaena's horse, her staff clicking softly against the stones. Harwin rode behind, scanning the trees with a soldier's wariness. By dusk, they reached a glade where the air hung thick and still. The horses grew uneasy, stamping and snorting, their breath steaming despite the cool air. Here, Isana said, stopping. This is where the fire passed. The ground was scorched in a wide circle. The trunks of nearby trees were blackened, their branches twisted as though from a blast of heat. At the center of the clearing lay a carcass, the remains of a stag, half-eaten, its bones charred. Rhaena dismounted and knelt beside it. The flesh was still warm. He hunts, she murmured. Harwin crouched beside her. Then he's close, too close for comfort. A sudden rustle in the underbrush made him draw steel, but it was no beast that emerged, only a boy, thin and mud-streaked, his eyes wide with terror. Mercy, my lady, he cried, falling to his knees. It was fire, I swear it. Came down from the clouds and burned the earth clean. I seen it. Rhaena approached slowly. What did you see, boy? A great black shape, he stammered. Wings big as the castle gate. It flew toward the river, and, gods, it screamed like a dying man. Did anyone follow it? Harwin asked. The boy shook his head violently. No, sir. Who'd be mad enough to chase a dragon? Rhaena's gaze hardened. Someone who means to control it. She tossed the boy a silver stag. Go home. Tell no one what you've seen. When he vanished into the trees, Rhaena turned to her companions. If Aryan Waters lives, he'll be hunting it too. We must reach it first. For 2 days they tracked the beast through the forest, following the scorched earth and the smell of smoke. Twice they found the remains of wild creatures, burned where they stood. Once they heard its cry, a sound so deep and mournful it stilled the very air. On the 3rd day, they reached the Riverlands. There, in a stretch of meadow bordered by willows, they saw the proof of their fears. The ground had been torn apart, as though a storm had clawed it open. The river ran black with ash, and in the center of the devastation stood a figure, Aryan Waters himself, his cloak tattered, his silver hair smeared with soot. Behind him, a half-dozen men in dark armor moved among the ruins. Rhaena dismounted and drew her sword. "He lives," she whispered. Harwin's jaw clenched, and he's not alone. Before they could move, Aryan turned. His eyes found hers across the field, and he smiled. A terrible, knowing smile. "Princess Rhaena," he called, his voice carrying over the wind. "You always arrive too late. I had begun to think the blood of the dragon had grown sluggish in your veins." "You defile our name," she said. "You meddle with powers that destroyed our house once before." He laughed, a harsh sound. "Destroyed? No, princess. They purified it. The weak burned, the strong endured. And now, at last, the fire has chosen again." He gestured behind him. From the shadow of the ruined willows rose the dragon. It was larger than before, its wings stretching wide, scales glimmering red and black in the sunlight. Smoke curled from its nostrils as it lowered its head, eyes burning like twin coals. Rhaena felt its gaze pierce her. The heat in her blood flared, and she swayed on her feet. "It knows you," Aryan said. "It remembers the one who gave it life." "I did not give it life," she said fiercely. "I only witnessed your madness." "Call it madness if you wish," he said. "But the realm will kneel to the return of dragons, and you, cousin, will kneel first." He raised a hand. The dragon's wings beat once, sending a gale of hot air across the field. Harwin stepped forward, sword ready. "Rhaena, get back!" the dragon roared. Fire leapt from its maw, a torrent of white flame that turned the grass to cinders. Rhaena threw herself to the ground as the blast seared overhead. The heat was unbearable, the sound deafening. Harwin charged through the smoke, his blade flashing. He struck down one of Aryan's men, then another, but there were too many. Rhaena scrambled to her feet, searching for Isana, only to find her standing at the river's edge, chanting in that strange, ancient tongue. The ground trembled. The dragon turned toward her, its jaws opening again. And then it faltered. Its roar broke into a shriek of pain as the earth beneath it split apart, swallowing the creature in a burst of steam and mud. Aryan screamed. "No!" Rhaena ran to Isana's side. The witch's face was white with strain, blood trickling from her nose. "Bind it!" she gasped. "It must not rise again." Rhaena seized the witch's hand and poured her strength into the spell, though she did not understand the words. Fire seared through her veins. The dragon writhed, its body thrashing within the fissure, until at last it fell still. When the light faded, silence returned. Only the hiss of cooling steam filled the air. Aryan knelt by the pit's edge, his face twisted in fury. "You've doomed us all," he spat. "Do you think the fire can be buried? It will rise again. And when it does, it will not remember mercy." Rhaena's voice shook, but her gaze did not waver. "Then I will face it when it comes." Harwin's sword caught the light as he stepped forward. "Your reign ends here, pretender." But when they looked again, Aryan was gone. Only the echo of his laughter lingered on the wind, faint and bitter as ash. By nightfall, the meadow was quiet. The dragon lay entombed beneath the earth, its breath silenced, its fire quenched, for now. Rhaena sat beside the river, her reflection flickering in the dark water. Harwin approached, weary and singed. "If it lives, it'll come for you one day." "I know," she said softly, "and when it does, I will not run." Above them, lightning flickered once in the distance. The air smelled faintly of smoke, though no fire burned. Far away, beyond the hills, something stirred beneath the earth. Something vast, waiting, dreaming of flame. The wind off the river carried a ghost's chill, sweeping through the camp where Rhaena Targaryen sat sleepless by the embers of a dying fire. The events of the past night haunted her still. The roar of the dragon, the hiss of steam, the sound of Aryann's laughter echoing from the darkness. Sleep, when it came, brought only flame and shadow. She saw herself standing before the Iron Throne as it melted beneath dragonfire, saw her mother's crown dissolve to ash in her hands. Each time she awoke, the smell of smoke lingered. Dawn came gray and cold. Isana sat nearby, her face drawn, her eyes sunken from the strain of the binding. Harwin moved about the camp in silence, sharpening his sword by habit more than need. None of them spoke for a long time. At last, Rhaena rose. "We cannot stay," she said. "If Aryan lives, he will not stop. He will raise others, perhaps men who still worship the fire. The Hand must already have heard of Summerhall's blaze." Harwin looked up from his blade. "Where do we go then? To King's Landing?" "To Driftmark first," she replied. "Lord Corlys must know what has happened. If the Hand moves against the crown, he will strike next at those loyal to the old blood." Isana's voice was thin but steady. "And what of the beast you buried? You think stone and prayer will hold it forever?" Rhaena hesitated. "No, but it will hold long enough." The witch smiled faintly, her pale eyes reflecting the weak light of dawn. "Fire is patient. It sleeps when it must." The road back to the coast was harsh and lonely. They rode through villages half ruined by years of storm and neglect, where the small folk watched with wary eyes and closed their doors at the sight of strangers. Word of fire in the Kingswood had already spread. They heard tales at every inn. Some spoke of a fallen star that set the forest ablaze, others of the gods punishing sinners with dragon flame. None knew the truth. Rhaena made certain it stayed that way. On the third day, they reached the cliffs overlooking Blackwater Bay. Driftmark lay beyond the mist, its towers rising faintly from the waves like ghostly fingers. A ship waited for them in a hidden cove, flying no banner. The captain, a grizzled man with scars across his cheek, greeted them with a bow. "The Sea Wraith, my lady. Lord Corlys said you'd come." "Has he sent word of the king?" she asked. The captain hesitated. "A raven reached us before we sailed. King Aegon still lives, but the Hand grows bolder. He has ordered that no ships leave the city. The Velaryons' loyalty is questioned. Driftmark stands alone." Rhaena's heart tightened. "Then we must reach it before the noose tightens further." They boarded at once. The wind was steady, the sails full, and soon the coast slipped behind them. Yet as night fell, the calm turned strange. The sea grew unnaturally still, and a faint red glow flickered far to the east beneath the clouds. Harwin saw it first. "There," he said, pointing. "That light. It follows us." Rhaena stood beside him at the rail, her breath caught in her throat. She knew that glow. It pulsed like the heartbeat of something vast. "The dragon," she whispered. Isana appeared behind them, her cloak snapping in the wind. "No," she said quietly. "Not the dragon. Its echo. The bond you forged binds you still. When it stirs, you will feel it. Then it lives, Rhaena said. Still. Isana's reply was barely a whisper. It never died. They reached Driftmark under a blood-colored dawn. The air smelled of salt and smoke, and the great hall of high tide was draped in morning black. Lord Corlys Velaryon sat by the hearth, his once bright eyes dimmed by age and grief. "Rhaena," he said as she entered, "you bring storms wherever you go." She bowed her head. "I bring truth, my lord. The fire burns again." Corlys sighed heavily. "Aye, word reached me of fire in the Kingswood, of men burned to cinders, and a dragon's cry heard over the bay. The Hand has sent ravens to every lord in the Crownlands. He names you witch and traitor, says you seek to raise the dead dragons to make war upon the realm." Rhaena's blood turned to ice. "He moves quickly." "He must," Corlys said. "King Aegon lies dying, and his court already divides like carrion over a feast. You must flee this island, child, before the Hand sends his blades to claim your head." Rhaena met his gaze. "No. If I run, he wins. If I stay silent, he will hunt others in my stead. I must go to King's Landing and face him before the Iron Throne itself." Harwin's voice was sharp. "That is folly. You'll walk into his noose." "I will walk into his hall as a dragon's heir," she said, "and I will not walk alone." Corlys rose, his cane striking the stone floor. "You cannot fight the Hand with pride alone. You'll need proof, allies, a symbol strong enough to make the lords remember who you are." Rhaena looked toward the open sea. "Then I will bring them fire." 2 nights later, a council met in secret beneath the castle. Only a handful of Corlys's most trusted captains and kin attended. Rhaena stood before them in the flickering light of torches, her cloak clasped with the old 3-headed dragon of House Targaryen. "The Hand seeks to end our line," she said. "He would erase the dragon's blood from the realm forever. Yet there are those who still remember the days when dragons ruled not with terror, but with strength. If I can reach the Red Keep before the king dies, I can reveal the Hand's treachery, but I will need a fleet to carry me and fire to make them fear." The captains murmured uneasily. One, an old sailor with a beard like sea foam, shook his head. "No man sails against the Hand's will. The Blackwater is watched. His ships choke the harbor." "Then we do not sail through the harbor," Rhaena said. "We sail beneath it." At her signal, Harwin stepped forward, unrolling a weathered map. "There are old tunnels beneath the cliffs west of the city. Smugglers' ways, unused since Mygor's reign. We can land there by night and enter unseen." "And once inside?" Corlys asked. "Once inside," Rhaena said, "we will find the king." Isana's voice broke the murmurs. "And what of the creature beneath the earth? You think it will sleep forever while you play at crowns? The fire calls you, Rhaena. You cannot flee it." Rhaena met her gaze steadily. "Then it will follow, and when it does, I will decide what it burns." They sailed before dawn. Only 3 ships dared the voyage, their hulls painted black to vanish against the sea. The air was thick with mist and the promise of rain. As the coast of King's Landing rose in the distance, a shadow passed across the moon. The sailors fell to their knees, whispering prayers. Rhaena lifted her eyes to the sky and saw it. The dragon, vast and terrible, gliding through the clouds like a living flame. It did not strike. It merely circled once, as though marking her passage, then vanished into the storm. Harwin turned to her, his voice barely a breath. "It follows you." Rhaena's hand tightened upon the rail. "No," she said. "It waits." And in the darkness before dawn, as the towers of the Red Keep loomed ahead. She felt its heartbeat in her blood, slow, steady, eternal, as if the dragon itself watched through her eyes. For the first time since Summerhall, she was not afraid. The fire had chosen. The black ships glided like shadows upon the dark waters of Blackwater Bay. Rain whispered against their decks, and the oars dipped soundlessly, breaking the surface in perfect rhythm. The mist hung thick as smoke, cloaking them from the watchfires of the city. Ahead, the cliffs of King's Landing loomed like the jaws of some ancient beast. Rhaena Targaryen stood at the prow of the lead ship, her cloak snapping in the wind. Behind her, Sir Harwin Hill checked his sword for the 100th time, while Isana knelt near the mast, whispering a prayer in a tongue no one knew. The night was too still, the air too cold. Even the waves seemed to retreat before the weight of their purpose. When the first glimmer of the harbor lights broke through the fog, Harwin spoke. "Once we make the caves, there'll be no turning back." Rhaena did not look at him. Her eyes were fixed on the looming walls of the city. There was no turning back the moment Aerion woke the dragon. They reached the cliffs just as the tide turned. The sailors worked in silence, lowering ropes and small skiffs into the black water. The air smelled of brine and rot. Beneath the cliffs, a narrow fissure opened, hidden from sight unless one knew where to look. Harwin was the first to enter, torch in hand. The tunnel yawned wide beyond the narrow mouth, the air damp and foul. They moved cautiously, their footsteps echoing through the dark like whispers in a crypt. Rhaena's torchlight glimmered against old stone, marks of tools long forgotten. "This place was carved by dragonfire," she murmured. Isana's voice came soft behind her. "Aye, the first kings built these paths when they still believed fire could keep their enemies at bay. Yet fire devours all, even those who wield it." "Then let it devour the hand," Rhaena said, pressing forward. After hours of winding tunnels and hidden stairways, they reached a rusted iron gate. Harwin forced it open with a grunt, the hinges shrieking in protest. Beyond lay the underbelly of the Red Keep, a warren of ancient passages that ran beneath the throne room itself. They emerged at last into a narrow cellar lined with old barrels. Above them, through the floorboards, came the faint murmur of voices and the ring of boots on stone. "Guards," Harwin said. "Too close." Rhaena motioned for silence. From her pouch, she drew a thin glass vial filled with dark red liquid. Isana's eyes widened. "Bloodfire?" "From Summerhall," Rhaena said. "What Aerion used to wake the egg." Harwin's jaw tightened. "You mean to use that here?" "Only if I must," she replied, tucking it away. "Come, we go upward." They climbed through the keep's lower halls like ghosts, avoiding the patrols that prowled the corridors. Twice they were forced into shadow as guards passed close enough to feel their breath. Each time, Isana murmured softly, and the air itself seemed to thicken, bending light around them. At last, they reached the royal apartments. The door to the king's chambers stood guarded by 2 gold cloaks. Rhaena hesitated only a moment. Then, with a nod to Harwin, she stepped into the open. "Hold!" one of the guards barked. "Who goes there?" The question died on his lips as he saw her. Even beneath her hood, her silver gold hair gleamed faintly, and her eyes, those unmistakable eyes of amethyst, caught the torchlight. "By the 7, the other guard breathed. "A Targaryen." "Stand aside," Rhaena said. "I come to see the king." The first guard raised his spear. "No one sees the king. The hand's orders." "Then tell the hand," Rhaena said coldly, "that the blood of the dragon does not ask permission." She raised her hand. The vial of blood fire shattered against the floor. Red light flared, and a wave of heat swept through the corridor. The guards cried out, stumbling back as the very air seemed to ignite. Rhaena strode forward through the smoke, her cloak untouched by flame. Harwin followed, coughing, and together they forced open the chamber door. Inside, the room was dim. The smell of herbs and decay filled the air. Upon the great bed, King Aegon III lay still as stone, his thin face pale and glistening with sweat. At his bedside stood Sir Marston Waters, the hand of the king, robed in black and gold. His eyes widened when he saw her. "You," he hissed. "I knew the witch blood would come creeping back from the shadows." "You poisoned him," Rhaena said. The hand smiled thinly. "He was already dying. I merely hastened mercy. The realm cannot survive another reign of dragons. Better a world without them than another dance." "And yet you would rule that world yourself," Rhaena said, "a coward who hides behind his master's crown." His smile faded. "You should have stayed buried in your ashes, girl. I had hoped the fire would finish what your mother began." Harwin's sword flashed from its sheath. "You'll choke on those words." But before he could strike, the king stirred. His eyes fluttered open, pale and glassy. "Rhaena," he whispered. She knelt beside him. "Cousin, be still. You've been deceived." His lips moved faintly. "The fire, beneath the mountain, it calls for you." Marston Waters laughed. "He raves. The poison clouds his wits. Soon he will be gone, and peace will come at last." "Peace built on lies," Rhaena said, rising to her feet. "You will answer for this." The hand's expression twisted with fury. "You think I fear you? The city hates your kind. They remember the burning skies. They will tear you apart before I raise a hand." "Then let them come," Rhaena said. The ground trembled. At first it was faint, a shiver through the stones, then stronger, until dust fell from the ceiling and the candles guttered in their holders. From far away came a low, rumbling roar, deep and terrible. Marston's face drained of color. No, it cannot be." Rhaena turned toward the window. Outside, the night sky glowed red. Fire rose beyond the walls, spreading like dawn. And above it, vast and dark against the clouds, wings beat, a shadow of flame and fury. The dragon had come. Harwin gripped his sword tighter. By the gods! How did it find us? Rhaena felt it in her blood. The pull, the bond, the answering fire. "It didn't find us," she said softly. "It came for me." The dragon's roar split the heavens, and the city below screamed in terror. Rhaena drew her sword and faced the trembling hand. "You wanted a world without dragons," she said. "Now see what your treachery has woken." The walls shook. The sound of chaos swelled outside, the clash of bells, the cries of fleeing men. Firelight flooded through the windows as the beast descended upon the Red Keep. In that moment, as the dragon's shadow passed over the room, Rhaena understood what her fate must be. She could not control the fire, but she could become it. The storm of flame had only just begun. The Red Keep trembled beneath the dragon's fury. Its walls, forged in the age of conquerors, groaned like wounded beasts as the night was torn asunder by flame and shadow. The roar of the creature shook the city to its bones. Towers cracked, bells screamed, and the people of King's Landing fled through the narrow streets like ants before the wrath of the gods. In the royal chambers, Rhaena Targaryen stood still amid the chaos, her hair whipped by heat, her eyes lit with the same crimson fire that devoured the sky. The air shimmered around her, thick with ash and smoke. The dragon's cry echoed through the stones. and she felt it deep in her chest, a heartbeat not her own, calling to her across the flames. Sir Marston Waters, the hand, staggered backward, his face pale with terror. "You've doomed us all," he shouted. "You've brought the same ruin your mother did." Rhaena's gaze fixed on him like a blade. "No, you brought this, with your poison and your lies. You thought to bury dragons, but fire does not die. It waits." He reached for the dagger at his belt, desperation turning to madness. Harwin was faster. His sword flashed once, and the hand's weapon clattered to the floor. "Stay your hand, Harwin," Rhaena said coldly. "He will answer to the king, if the king still lives." But even as she spoke, she knew the truth. Aegon III, the Dragonbane, lay unmoving upon his bed, his face ghostly in the firelight. The life in him flickered faintly, as if his soul hovered between this world and the next. The ceiling groaned. Smoke poured through the cracks as fire licked at the edges of the chamber. Outside, the dragon roared again, closer this time. Harwin turned toward her. "We must go. The whole keep will come down." She did not move. Her gaze remained on the dying boy king. "No," she whispered. "Not without him." She crossed the room, seized the frail king in her arms, and pulled him from the bed. His eyes fluttered open briefly. "Rhaena," he murmured. "The dragon. It is you." The words sent a chill through her blood. Harwin caught her arm. "Princess, now!" Together they fled through the smoke-filled corridors, Isana leading with her staff blazing like a beacon. Guards ran past them, screaming for order that would never come. The Red Keep was a hive of panic, the sky above it a storm of flame. When they reached the Great Hall, the doors were already splintered. Half the roof had collapsed, and fire rained from above. Through the shattered ceiling, Rhaena saw it, vast and terrible, the dragon descending upon the castle, its wings blotting out the stars. Its scales burned like black glass, and its eyes were molten gold. The same creature she had helped awaken. It landed upon the tower of the hand, claws rending stone, tail coiling around the battlements. Soldiers scattered like leaves before the wind. The beast reared, its chest glowing, and with one exhalation unleashed a torrent of flame that devoured the tower whole. The roar that followed was not of a monster alone. It was of rage, of memory, of a bloodline that refused to die. Rhaena's knees buckled beneath the weight of it. Her vision swam. She could feel the creature's thoughts, wild, searing, bound to hers by the blood fire that had created it. "Rhaena!" Harwin shouted. "You're bleeding!" She touched her face. Blood streamed from her nose, warm and slick. Her body trembled with power not her own. "It calls to me," she gasped. "It knows my name." Isana's voice cut through the din, sharp as thunder. "Then answer it, or it will burn everything." Rhaena's gaze locked on the dragon. The connection between them flared like lightning, the bond forged in Summerhall awakening in full. She felt its rage, its loneliness, its hunger for recognition. She stepped into the open air, out onto the broken balcony that overlooked the inferno. "I am Rhaena of the House of the Dragon," she cried, her voice carrying through the storm. "If you remember me, then hear my command." The beast turned its head. Firelight danced across its face, illuminating fangs as long as swords. For a heartbeat, all the world seemed to hold its breath. Then it leapt from the tower, wings spreading wide, and landed before her in the courtyard below, the ground shaking beneath its weight. Harwin moved to follow, but Isana caught his arm. "Do not interfere. This is not for mortal men." The dragon lowered its head, its breath steaming in the night. Rhaena descended the steps slowly, her heart hammering, her body trembling from the heat. The air rippled around her, alive with power. When she reached the creature, she raised her hand. Its nostrils flared, smoke curled around her fingers, but she did not pull back. "Be still," she whispered. "Your fire is mine." The dragon's pupils narrowed. For a moment, it seemed the beast would strike, and then, slowly, it bent its neck, lowering its head until her hand touched the scales between its eyes. The bond flared like a starburst. Rhaena gasped as visions poured through her. The burning skies of Valyria, the roar of ancient dragons soaring over fields of flame, her ancestors crowned in ash and glory. The weight of it nearly crushed her, but she held fast. The dragon's eyes softened, its fury dimming to embers. From above, a shout pierced the air. "Kill her!" Arrows hissed from the walls, crossbowmen loyal to the hand rallying in panic. One bolt struck the dragon's neck, another grazed Rhaena's arm. The creature bellowed in rage. Harwin and Isana charged into the courtyard, cutting down the first of the attackers. Rhaena turned toward the archers, fury blazing in her eyes. "No," she said, her voice trembling with power. "No more." The dragon lifted its head and unleashed a wall of fire that consumed the parapets. Stone melted like wax. The screams of men vanished into the roar of flame. When silence fell, the Red Keep stood wreathed in smoke. Harwin limped toward her, blood on his cheek. "It's done. The Hand's men are broken. But the city..." Rhaena looked beyond the walls. Fire had spread through Flea Bottom and the riverfront. King's Landing was burning. The sight twisted her heart, but she could not look away. Isana approached, her face grave. "The beast is bound to you now. Its fire will follow your will, or your fear. Be careful which you feed." Rhaena looked up at the dragon, which lowered its head once more beside her. "I did not seek to be Queen of Ashes," she said softly. "But if fire is all that remains to my house, then I will wield it as a sword, not a torch." She turned toward the gates of the Red Keep, where the dawn's first light fought to pierce the smoke. "The realm will know the dragons live again," she said, "and those who betrayed their blood will learn the price." Harwin bowed his head. "And if they name you Destroyer?" "Then let them," she replied, "for every destroyer is a maker in the eyes of fire." The dragon lifted its wings. The rush of air scattered the ash, revealing a glimpse of sunlight breaking through the storm. Rhaena mounted its neck, the heat searing through her boots, but she did not flinch. Below, the people of the city knelt or fled. The bells of the sept tolled in mourning, their sound mingling with the thunder of wings. As she rose into the sky, fire trailing behind her like a comet, Rhaena Targaryen looked down upon the city her ancestors had built and burned. For the first time, she understood the truth that had eluded her bloodline for generations. The agony of the House of the Dragon was not that they wielded fire, but that they could never put it down. Dawn's light spilled across the smoking ruins of King's Landing, like the pale hand of mercy over a battlefield. From the sky, Rhaena Targaryen could see the truth of what her fire had wrought. The city still burned. Columns of black smoke rose like funeral pyres from the riverfront. The great sept's dome had collapsed inward, and the harbor was choked with ash and wreckage. The dragon beneath her wings, her dragon, beat the air with slow, thunderous strokes, each one scattering the soot-laden clouds. The people below had fled into the fields and woods, leaving the capital as silent as a tomb. No songs of the small folk, no clang of hammers or cry of market traders, only the low moan of wind through broken stones. Rhaena's silver hair whipped about her face as she guided the creature higher. It obeyed without word or rein, as though her thoughts were its own. The bond between them throbbed in her veins, vast and terrible. She felt the creature's hunger, its pain, and its strange, fierce joy at being alive again. Below, the Red Keep was a ruin. Towers cracked, bridges fallen. The Hand's Tower burned brightest of all, a black spear of smoke against the dawn. Somewhere beneath those stones lay the man who had poisoned the king and betrayed her house. The king himself was gone. Whether Aegon had died in his bed or in the flames, she had not learned. And yet, she felt certain of it, certain as the wind and the fire. His frail heart had stopped while she faced the dragon. The line of the dragonbane had ended. Now there was only her. Rhaena turned the beast eastward. The morning wind carried the stench of charred wood and burnt flesh. She looked once more upon the city of her ancestors and whispered, "Forgive me." The dragon roared in answer, and they soared beyond the walls. By midday, they had reached the Kingswood again. The creature flew low over the trees, casting a vast shadow that sent birds scattering. Rhaena found a clearing beside a narrow stream and urged it down. It landed heavily, the ground trembling beneath its weight. When she dismounted, her legs trembled. The dragon's eyes followed her every step. Its scales shimmered in the sun, dark as obsidian, its breath steaming even in the warm air. She placed a hand against its neck, feeling the steady pulse beneath. "You are fire reborn," she said softly, "and yet you are my burden as well." It lowered its head, snorting, and the sound was almost understanding. Harwin and Isana arrived an hour later, both soot-streaked and weary. Harwin's mail was blackened from smoke, and Isana leaned heavily upon her staff. They had escaped the Red Keep by sea, taking one of the small boats through the old smugglers' tunnels before the fire closed them. When Harwin saw Rhaena alive, he fell to one knee in the ashes. "By all the gods, I thought you lost." Rhaena shook her head. "The fire does not claim its own." Isana's voice was hoarse. "The king?" Rhaena looked away. "Gone. The Hand with him. The city burns. The realm will soon know what I have done." The witch studied her in silence for a long moment. "Then the realm will fear you." "They will need me," Rhaena replied. "The lords will rise to claim the throne. Houses divided by the dance will turn their blades upon one another again. Someone must stand above them." Harwin frowned. "And you mean to take the crown?" "I mean to protect what remains of my blood," she said. "If the realm must have a dragon, better one who remembers mercy." Isana gave a weary laugh. "Mercy and fire rarely share the same breath." Rhaena met her gaze. "Then I will be the first." They camped that night beneath the trees. The dragon slept nearby, curled like a mountain of embers, smoke rising softly from its nostrils. Every so often it shifted, and the ground shook beneath them. Rhaena sat by the fire, staring into the flames. Her dreams were too vivid to sleep. Visions of her mother, Rhaenyra, walking through halls of ash, of Aryan waters, screaming as the earth swallowed him, of 1,000 wings beating in the darkness, calling her name. When Harwin sat beside her, she did not look up. "You've done what none thought possible," he said. "You've woken a dragon after the end of their kind." "I've undone a curse," she murmured. "You've loosed another." She turned her eyes upon him, their violet depths shimmering with firelight. "Do you fear me now, Sir Harwin?" He hesitated. "I fear what follows you. Fire does not choose sides. It only burns. Then pray I learn to wield it well." They fell into silence. The crackle of the fire mingled with the dragon's slow breathing. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rumbled, though no storm gathered above. Isana came to them as the night deepened. "The creature dreams," she said. "It remembers places that no longer exist, mountains of black glass, rivers that run with molten light." "Valyria," Rhaena said. The witch nodded. "It is born of that fire, and so are you." Rhaena rose. "Then I will see it for myself. If the truth of dragons lies there, I will find it." Harwin stood. "Valyria is death. No ship that sails there returns." "Then I will ride," she said simply. He stared at her, stricken. "You would fly into the doom itself." "The fire began there," she said. "Perhaps it will end there." Isana's pale eyes glimmered. "Perhaps. Or perhaps it will only learn your name." The journey south took them through the Stormlands once more. Everywhere they went, the people fled at the sight of the dragon overhead. Villages emptied, castles barred their gates. Word of her coming spread like wildfire. The Silver Queen, the daughter of Flame, the she-dragon of Summerhall. She did not correct them. In the port of Tarth, she found ships abandoned, their crews vanished into the hills. No sailor dared approach the harbor when the shadow of the beast passed over the sea. At last, upon a lonely beach of black sand, Rhaena knelt and pressed her palm to the earth. The tide whispered against the stones. The dragon stood behind her, restless, wings shifting in the wind. Harwin approached quietly. "If we go farther, there will be no turning back." "There was never turning back," she said. "Not since the day I read that letter." Isana leaned on her staff, the wind tugging at her gray hair. "Then let the fire carry you, princess. Whatever waits beyond the waves, it will not welcome you kindly." Rhaena looked up at the dragon. "Neither did the world behind me." She climbed into the saddle, the heat of the creature's body seeping through her boots. It stretched its wings, black and terrible against the dying sun. "Where you go, I go," Harwin said suddenly, stepping forward. Rhaena smiled faintly. "Then hold fast, Sir Knight. The wind of dragons spares no man." The dragon leapt skyward. The sand exploded beneath it, and the waves bowed low. Within moments, the island fell away, swallowed by sea and cloud. Ahead lay the smoking horizon, the long, dark reach of Valyria, where the air shimmered with firelight even by day. The beast roared once, and the wind carried the sound across the endless waters. Rhaena closed her eyes, letting the pull of the bond guide her. She did not know whether she flew toward redemption or ruin. But she knew this: the agony of her house had begun in flame, and in flame it would find its reckoning. The sea beneath the dragon was black as obsidian, the air thick with the scent of salt and smoke. For 3 days and nights, Rhaena Targaryen flew south across the narrow sea, chasing the ghost of a land long dead. The world below grew emptier with each passing hour. The waves turned strange and sluggish, their color shifting from blue to gray to the oily sheen of ash. There were no gulls here, no ships, no stars when the clouds rolled in, only the whisper of wind through her dragon's wings and the endless rumble of thunder over distant horizons. Harwin clung behind her, silent save for the rasp of his breath. He had long ceased to look down. Even a hardened knight found little comfort in staring into that cursed sea. Isana had spoken true. This was not a realm for mortal flesh. By the dawn of the 4th day, the air grew hot. The sky burned red at the edges, and the sea frothed with veins of steam. When Rhaena looked ahead, she saw it at last, a vast black line rising from the mist, jagged and broken like the teeth of a god. Valyria. The doom had shattered it long ago, but even ruin could not quiet its power. Columns of smoke twisted upward from cracks in the land. Molten rivers carved their paths between shattered spires. What had once been the heart of the greatest empire now lay as a scar upon the world, glowing faintly with the breath of fire that had never died. Her dragon roared as they neared the coast. The sound echoed through the crumbling towers and was answered by a deep, distant cry, a call from something buried in the heart of that forsaken land. Rhaena felt the answering pulse in her veins, the same rhythm that had bound her to the creature beneath her. "It remembers," she murmured. Harwin leaned close to be heard above the wind. "What does?" "The world," she said. They landed upon a blackened plain strewn with the bones of dragons. Great ribs curved toward the sky, fused into glass by ancient fire. The ground was warm underfoot, cracked with veins of glowing rock. Heat shimmered in the air like breath. Rhaena dismounted, her boots sinking into ash. The dragon crouched behind her, wings folded, uneasy but obedient. Steam hissed from its nostrils as if the land itself made it wary. Ysana had once told her that the Doom still lived here, that the fire of the earth had consumed men and dragons alike, leaving only their spirits to wander. As Rhaena walked among the ruins, she wondered if that were true, for she could feel eyes upon her, though none walked these roads. They passed through a field of black stone arches, each carved with runes so old their meaning was lost. Beneath one, Harwin found what looked like a stairway descending into darkness. Rhaena peered down. The steps glowed faintly, pulsing like veins of blood. "This way," she said. Harwin hesitated. If this is where the fire sleeps, it may not wake kindly. "It will wake," she said. "It always does." The stairway wound deep into the earth, the air growing hotter with every step. At last, they entered a vast cavern lit by molten light. Rivers of fire flowed between pillars of stone, and in the center stood a great altar of fused glass and metal. Something rested atop it, a black orb veined with red, faintly pulsing as though alive. Another dragon's egg. Rhaena approached, her breath quickening. "The last of the fire," she whispered. "The heart of Valyria itself." Harwin's sword rasped free. "It's a trap if ever there was one." But she ignored him. She reached out her hand, and as her fingers brushed the surface of the egg, a wave of heat shot through her arm, searing her to the bone. She cried out, but did not pull away. Visions exploded behind her eyes, cities of shining marble, dragons wheeling over crimson skies, a mountain splitting open to devour them all. She saw the doom itself, the fire that broke the world, and within it, a face that was her own. The egg cracked. Harwin shouted her name. The ground split beneath them, and fire erupted from the veins of stone. The dragon above shrieked in answer, bursting into the cavern through a rift in the ceiling. Flames engulfed the altar, and from them rose a creature of shadow and light, winged, massive, yet not whole. It was a dragon, yes, but one formed of fire alone, its scales translucent, its roar the sound of mountains breaking. Rhaena fell to her knees, her hands pressed to the burning earth. She felt both dragons, the living flesh above, the living flame before her, and between them, her own blood burned like oil. "They are one," she gasped. "The flame and the flesh, they were never separate." Isana's voice echoed in her memory. "Fire may cleanse, or it may devour." The spirit dragon turned its blazing eyes upon her. In its depths, she saw all the agony of her house, Aegon's conquest, Maegor's cruelty, her mother's fall, the long line of kings who had built their thrones from ash. It spoke without words. "You would bear our curse again?" Rhaena's voice was raw. "I would end it. Then end yourself." The fire surged. Harwin tried to reach her, but a wall of flame drove him back. Rhaena stood alone upon the altar, her cloak igniting around her. The living dragon above screamed in agony as though feeling her pain. Rhaena raised her arms to the fire. "If blood made the doom, then blood shall unmake it." The cavern blazed white. Heat like the sun filled her lungs. The flame dragon reared, merging with her light. For a moment, she was neither woman nor beast, but something vast, fire given form, fury given voice. She saw the seas boil, the mountains tremble, the ghosts of Valyria bow before her. Then silence. When Harwin awoke, the cavern was dark and cold. The rivers of lava had hardened into stone. The altar shattered. Of Rhaena, there was no sign. Only her dragon remained, crouched at the far end of the chamber. Its scales no longer burned red, but gleamed silver as moonlight. It lowered its head as Harwin approached, and in its golden eyes flickered a human sorrow. Something glimmered among the ashes where the altar had been. Harwin knelt and found a shard of black glass shaped like a scale. Within it, faintly, he saw the reflection of Rhaena's face, calm, resolute, and fading like smoke. The knight closed his fist around it. "Your fire lives still, my princess," he whispered. Above, the skies of Valyria cleared for the first time in centuries. The red haze faded, revealing a pale dawn that shimmered over the ruins. From the heart of the shattered land rose a single plume of silver flame, thin as a ribbon, twisting toward the heavens. Harwin mounted the dragon, feeling its heat thrum beneath him. As it leapt skyward, the wind tore through his hair, and he looked back one last time at the burning continent. In that moment, he understood what she had done. The fire that had doomed Valyria would now sleep again, bound by Targaryen blood, the last sacrifice of the House of the Dragon. He turned the creature north, toward the fading light of Westeros. Behind them, Valyria sank once more into shadow. But for the first time in memory, the smoke carried no screams, only the whisper of wings and the memory of a queen who had become fire itself. Days passed before the Black Sea released them from the grasp of Valyria. Harwin had not spoken since the morning he fled that cursed land. He rode the silver-scaled dragon like a ghost himself, his armor tarnished, his sword hanging loose in its scabbard. Each beat of the creature's wings carried them farther from the smoking horizon, yet the scent of fire and blood clung to him still. At night, when they rested upon lonely isles of rock and salt, he dreamed of her, of Rhaena standing amidst the fire, her face calm as she vanished into the light. Sometimes he awoke to the sound of her voice, whispering his name through the crackle of the campfire. Other nights, he would find the dragon watching him with eyes like molten gold, as though it, too, longed for the mistress it had lost. When they reached the coast of Westeros, the land was quiet beneath a gray dawn. The dragon sat down upon a cliff above the sea, where the grass grew blackened from storm and salt. Harwin dismounted, his legs weak from days of flight, and gazed northward. Somewhere beyond the mists lay the Reach, the Stormlands, and farther still, King's Landing, if it still stood. He no longer knew what world awaited him. The dragon crouched behind him, folding its wings. The silver sheen of its scales dulled under the pale light. It was smaller than before, less a weapon now, more a memory of one. When Harwin reached out to touch its neck, the creature rumbled softly, as if mourning. "We live," Harwin murmured. "That's all she asked of us." He unfastened the pouch at his belt and drew out the black shard he had carried from Valyria. It was smooth and warm, shaped like a dragon's scale. When he held it to the light, faint lines glowed within, red as dying embers. Sometimes, when the wind was still, he thought he could hear a heartbeat pulsing from within. "She's not gone," he whispered. "Not truly." 3 days' ride brought him to the Stormlands. Word of King's Landing's burning had reached even the small folk there. At every village he passed, men whispered of dragons in the sky, of the Red Keep in ruin, of a silver-haired witch who had set the world ablaze. None spoke her name with certainty. Some called her the Flame Queen, others the Doom's daughter. Harwin said nothing. He bought what he needed and rode on. In the halls of Storm's End, Lord Daven Baratheon sat in uneasy council with his bannermen. The great hall smelled of damp stone and fear. When Harwin entered, the murmurs ceased. His armor was scorched, his cloak torn, yet the mark of the dragon upon his breast silenced any challenge. "My lord," Harwin said, kneeling, "I come from the east, from Valyria itself." That drew a stir from the gathered knights. Daven's gaze hardened. "Few who go there return. Why should I believe you?" Harwin reached into his pouch and placed the shard upon the table. The lords drew back as it glowed faintly, pulsing with a soft red light. "This is all that remains of Rhaena Targaryen," he said. "Her blood sealed the fire that once doomed the world. She gave her life so that no dragon's flame would ever again consume the earth." The hall fell silent. At last, Daven rose. "If that is true, then she has done what no king of her house could. The realm owes her more than it will ever know." Harwin closed his fist around the shard. "And yet it will curse her all the same." The Lord of Storm's End inclined his head. "The realm fears dragons, Sir Knight. It always has. But the fire is gone, and fear fades with time. You may rest here as long as you wish. You have seen enough flame for one life." But Harwin shook his head. "I cannot rest. There is one thing more I must do." He looked toward the sea, where the dragon waited beyond the walls, its silhouette framed by lightning. "She gave her life to end the fire. I will not let her name die in the ashes." He rode north. Wherever he went, he found ruin. The lands around King's Landing were scorched, the small folk scattered. The city itself lay blackened, its towers half fallen, the Red Keep a skeleton of stone. Yet amidst the ruin, life endured. Small fires lit by those who refused to flee, traitors huddling in the shadows of broken walls, priests preaching that the gods had purged the realm of its sins. When Harwin entered the city gates, no one stopped him. He passed the ruins of the Sept, the melted bronze doors of the keep, the square where once the Iron Throne had stood. Only shards of the throne remained, twisted into the stone floor. He dismounted and walked among the wreckage. The air still smelled faintly of smoke, though rain had long since washed the soot away. He knelt where the great hall had once been, and placed the shard upon the cracked marble. "This is where she was born," he said softly, "and this is where she should rest." He drew his dagger and cut his palm, letting a few drops of blood fall upon the shard. The stone drank it in greedily, glowing brighter for a moment before dimming to a steady, gentle light. From somewhere deep below the earth came a low, distant sound, a tremor, faint but unmistakable. The dragon, waiting outside the walls, lifted its head. Harwin smiled through his tears. "She hears," he whispered. "Even now." At sunset, he climbed the hill above the city. The dragon followed, silent and watchful. Together, They stood upon the charred stones where the kings of old had once built their seat. The wind carried the scent of rain from the west, washing away the smoke at last. Harwin turned to the creature. "You were hers," he said, "but she gave you to the world. Go now, be free." The dragon tilted its head as though uncertain. Harwin stepped back and pointed toward the open sky. "Go." It spread its wings, the silver scales catching the fading light, and with a roar that shook the hill, it leapt into the clouds. The sound echoed for miles, long after it vanished from sight. Harwin watched until the sky swallowed it whole. Then he sank to his knees, weary beyond words. "You gave them peace," he murmured, "but they'll never understand." He drew his cloak around him as night fell. The wind whispered through the broken stones, carrying faint echoes of dragons long gone. Some said that in the years that followed, the fire never returned to the realm. Others swore they saw a silver shadow flying east when the moon was full, and heard the cry of a dragon far out to sea. But those were tales for another age. The truth was simpler. The line of the dragon had ended in flame, and from that flame had risen silence, a peace bought with blood and sorrow. And though her name was cursed by the fearful and forgotten by the wise, there were still a few who looked to the east and whispered it with reverence. Rhaena Targaryen, last of the Fireborn, the queen who burned herself to save the world. Years passed, and the memory of the dragon's fire faded into rumor. The small folk of the Crownlands spoke of the burning queen in hushed tones by their hearths, saying she had been both savior and curse. In the Riverlands, minstrels sang of a silver-haired maiden who tamed the last dragon and vanished beyond the sea. But as the years turned, the songs grew shorter, the truth dimmer, until she was but another ghost in the long, haunted history of House Targaryen. Yet fire does not sleep forever. In the twilight of his years, Sir Harwin Hill lived quietly upon a stretch of coast not far from Driftmark. The sea had grayed his hair and lined his face with salt, but his eyes, clear and winter blue, still carried the same watchfulness. He had built his hall upon a cliff of black stone, where the wind smelled always of rain and the cries of gulls echoed like distant memory. Each morning, he would climb the path that led to the edge of the sea and stand looking east. The horizon there was a gray blur, endless and shifting. Some nights, when the moon hung low and the water glowed silver, he fancied he could see wings in the clouds, vast, fleeting shadows moving toward the dawn. The villagers called him the Watcher of the Waves. They said he waited for ghosts, or perhaps for the end of the world. They did not know the truth he carried in his heart, that the woman he had served, the princess who became a flame, still lingered in the air, in the fire, and in the blood that pulsed through the veins of the world. He kept the shard of dragon glass she had left behind in a chest beside his bed. It pulsed still, faintly, as though with the rhythm of a slow heartbeat. Some nights it was warm to the touch, other nights it lay cold as death. He had never dared to part with it. One evening, when the sun sank red into the western sea, a rider came from Driftmark. The man bore the colors of House Velaryon, though his cloak was worn and his face hard from travel. He bowed low when Harwin received him in the hall. "My Lord Knight," he said, "the sea snake has passed." Harwin closed his eyes. He was old, and the sea always calls its own. "Aye," the rider said, "but before he died, Lord Corlys left a charge to summon you. He said there were matters yet unresolved. He spoke of Rhaena Targaryen." At that name, Harwin's heart stirred, like an ember catching wind. "Then I will come," he said. Driftmark was no longer the shining hall of pearls and saltstone he remembered. The sea had battered its walls, and the house stood half empty, its torches dim. Lord Corlys Velaryon, the famed sea snake, lay wrapped in silks upon a bier surrounded by candles. His hair was white as snow, his face peaceful. Beside him stood a woman in black, her eyes sharp as the tide. "You are the knight who followed the last dragon," she said. "My grandsire spoke of you. He said you carried the truth of what befell her." Harwin bowed, a truth few would believe. "Then tell it," she said. So he told her of Summerhall, of the egg and the fire, of Aryon's madness and the binding beneath the mountain, of King's Landing aflame, of Valeria's heart, and of how Rhaena Targaryen had given her life to quiet the doom. When he finished, the hall was silent, save for the hiss of candles. The lady's eyes glimmered. "Then she did not die as the songs say." "No," Harwin said. "She became what her house was born to be. Fire itself." The woman stepped closer. "And the dragon?" He hesitated. "Gone. Free, I hope. She would have wanted that." The woman regarded him a long while, then opened a small coffer she held. Within lay a letter, the seal unbroken, 3 dragon heads pressed into black wax. "This was found among the sea snake's papers," she said. "It bears your name." Harwin took it with trembling hands. The parchment was brittle, yet the seal broke cleanly. The letter within was written in a hand he knew too well, precise, elegant, touched with strength. "Sir Harwin," it read, "if ever this reaches you, know that I am not gone. The fire I carried is not one that dies. When the world grows cold again, it will awaken. Keep faith. Guard what remains. One day the dragons will need a guide who remembers both mercy and flame. Rhaena of the House of the Dragon." The words blurred as his eyes filled with tears. He folded the letter and pressed it to his chest. "She lives," the lady whispered. Harwin shook his head slowly. "No, but her spirit moves through the world still. She is in every spark that burns, every dawn that rises." That night, a storm rose over Driftmark. Waves battered the cliffs, and lightning split the sky in jagged forks of light. Harwin stood upon the parapet, the shard of dragon glass in his hand. It throbbed with warmth, stronger than he had ever felt before. The wind howled, and through the roar of thunder came a sound that froze him where he stood. A cry, long and deep, rolling across the sea like a call from another age. He looked to the east. There, in the heart of the storm, a shape moved among the clouds. Vast wings unfolded against the lightning. The creature's scales gleamed silver and black, and its eyes burned with golden fire. It circled once above the sea, trailing flame across the sky, before vanishing into the storm. Harwin fell to his knees. The shard in his hand pulsed once more, then shattered into dust. He smiled through the tears that streaked his weathered face. "So you return at last," he whispered. "The world will remember you, Rhaena. The fire endures." At dawn, the storm was gone. The sea lay calm and still. Fishermen who sailed that morning swore they saw something vast gliding beneath the waves, a serpent of silver fire, its reflection dancing on the surface. In the years that followed, tales spread again across the realm. Some said the last dragon had returned, reborn from the ashes of the doom. Others claimed the burning queen had risen from the depths to guard her children's world from the darkness. None knew for certain. But in the quiet halls of Driftmark, the descendants of House Velaryon kept a single candle burning day and night beside Lord Corlys's tomb. Its flame never wavered, even when the winds howled and storms lashed the island. They said it burned with the light of dragonfire. silver and soft, eternal. And those who believed whispered that as long as that flame endured, so too would the blood of the dragon. Rhaena Targaryen, the queen who walked into fire and returned to the sky. The agony of her house had ended, but its flame, like her name, could never be extinguished. The years rolled by like the slow turn of the tide. The kingdoms mended their wounds, the scars of fire fading into legend. The small folk spoke of Rhaena Targaryen as they might speak of a dream, a tale to hush children, a myth to stir awe around dying hearths. Yet, among the great houses, her name was less easily forgotten. The maesters wrote of her with careful hands, calling her the last dragon, while the faith named her the burning heretic. But to those who had seen the sky aflame, she was something greater still, a warning and a promise. In the reign of King Daeron II, long after Rhaena's passing into legend, whispers began once more. A trader from Lys swore he had glimpsed a creature vast and silver-winged flying over the stepstones. Sailors in the narrow sea spoke of a roar that shook their ships from below the waves, and fishermen along the Blackwater found their nets burned clean by unseen heat. In Old Town, the Maesters dismissed these stories as fancies, but others remembered the truth, those few who still kept her secret. Among them was an old knight who had served as a page in his youth to Sir Harwin Hill, the Watcher of the Waves. His name was Sir Corran Storm, a bastard of Storm's End, weathered and wise, with eyes that had looked too long upon the sea. When the tales began, he left his service in the south and rode north alone, carrying nothing but a sword and an old letter sealed with black wax. The letter was all that remained of Harwin's estate, its ink faded but legible still. Guard what remains. When the world grows cold again, the fire will awaken. Sir Corran did not know what those words meant, but he had spent his life wondering. Now, with the whispers of dragons returning to the world, he could no longer ignore them. He rode to Driftmark, as Harwin had before him. The island lay wind-swept and lonely, its halls quiet with age. The line of Velaryons still held it, though their ships were fewer now and their lords less proud. Lady Marilda Velaryon received him in the great hall, where the sea winds howled through cracked windows. She was tall and pale, her hair white as foam. "You seek ghosts, Sir Corran," she said when he told her his purpose. "Driftmark remembers the sea, not the sky." "I seek neither," he said. "Only truth. Your forebears knew Rhaena Targaryen. Some served her. Some saw her dragon. There must be something they kept." The lady's gaze flickered toward the far end of the hall, where a narrow stair wound down into the depths of the keep. "There is an old crypt below," she said quietly. "Few go there now. The sea seeps in, and the stones shift with the tides. But if any truth lingers, it will be there." The stair was long and damp, the air heavy with the scent of salt and dust. Corran descended alone, his torch casting a dim circle of light against the wet stone. The deeper he went, the more he felt the weight of centuries pressing down, as though the island itself watched him. At last, the passage opened into a low chamber. The walls were lined with ancient tombs, their names long worn away by time. At the center stood a single chest of black stone. Upon its lid was carved the sigil of the three-headed dragon, and beneath it, words so faint they were nearly lost. "The flame remembers." Corran knelt and brushed the dust away. When he lifted the lid, the torchlight flared, reflecting off something that glimmered within. It was a crown, slender and wrought of dark steel, inlaid with veins of red glass. It seemed to hum softly in his hands, warm to the touch despite the chill of the crypt. Beneath it lay a shard of black crystal, no larger than a child's palm. He knew at once what it was. The masters might call it stone, but Harwin's writings named it otherwise. The last breath of the dragon. As he touched it, heat surged through his body, fierce and pure. For an instant, the world fell away. He saw flames sweeping across the sea, silver wings cutting the clouds, and a woman's voice, soft as a whisper, speaking his name though he had never heard it before. When the vision passed, he found himself kneeling before the chest, the torch guttered low. The shard no longer glowed, yet he could feel it still, pulsing faintly in rhythm with his heart. He took both crown and shard and left the crypt. That night, storms gathered over the sea. Waves crashed against the cliffs of Driftmark, and thunder rolled like the voice of dragons. In her chamber above, Lady Marilda watched the sky burn red with lightning. From her window, she saw Sir Coran standing upon the battlements, his cloak snapping in the wind, the shard raised in his hand. The air around him shimmered, and then from the darkness beyond the waves came a sound that froze her blood, a cry vast and sorrowful, older than any language of men. The sea erupted. Something immense rose from the depths, wings of silver flame, eyes of molten gold. The dragon's body glistened like moonlit water, its scales smooth as glass. It circled once above the tower, then descended, its shadow swallowing the island whole. Marilda fell to her knees. Corin did not move. The creature alighted before him, and in its breath was warmth, not ruin. "By the gods," she whispered. The flame returns. When morning came, Driftmark lay quiet again. The storm had passed. The battlements were empty save for a black shard resting upon the stone, cold now, lifeless. Sir Corin was gone. No tracks led from the walls, no sign of struggle, no trace at all. But far out at sea, the sailors of a merchant ship swore they saw a silver dragon flying eastward into the dawn, its rider's cloak streaming behind like a banner of flame. The tale spread faster than the tide. The Meisters denied it, of course. They said it was heat lightning or a trick of the waves. But the small folk did not listen. In the taverns of King's Landing and the markets of Old Town, they began to whisper again of dragons, of a queen who had been reborn, of the fire that slept beneath the world and could not die. Some said it was Rhaena herself returned from the sea. Others said it was her heir, born from the last spark she left behind. But all agreed on one thing. The flame had not gone out. It had merely been waiting, as dragons always do, for the world to forget its fear. And when the time came, it would rise again, for fire is patient and blood remembers. Winter had crept slowly across the land. The snows came early that year, blanketing even the southern hills of Westeros in white. The rivers froze, the fields lay dead and silent, and the winds that blew from the east carried a taste of salt and ash. In taverns and keeps alike, men spoke of omens, of strange lights dancing across the sky, of the sea steaming under moonlight, of the call of a great beast heard far out upon the waves. In the citadel of Old Town, the Meisters bent their gray heads over dusty scrolls and argued in hushed voices. No proof, they said, no certainty. Yet even they could not explain the silver fire that had been seen upon the horizon, or the trembling of the earth that followed in its wake. It had been nearly 50 years since Sir Corin's storm vanished from Driftmark. Some claimed he had ridden the wind into myth. Others said he had drowned with the last of the dragon dreams. But in the deep halls of the citadel, where knowledge was hoarded like gold, a single record survived. A letter penned in a hand both strong and graceful. To those who come after, it read, "The fire sleeps beneath the sea. When the cold grows deep enough to choke the stars, it shall rise again. One must guide it, or the world will burn anew. No seal, no name, but the wax upon the parchment bore the faint imprint of 3 dragon heads. Far to the north, beyond the neck, a blizzard swept across the hills of the Vale. Amid that storm, a rider fought her way up a narrow mountain pass. Her horse stumbled through drifts of snow, and the wind tore at her cloak. She was young, not yet 20, with hair the color of pale gold, and eyes the shade of amethyst. She called herself Arya Waters, a bastard born of nothing and nowhere. Yet those who looked closely saw the truth written in her face, the echo of an ancient bloodline that time had not extinguished. She had no memory of her mother, only fragments of tales whispered by her dying nurse. A woman with silver hair who came from the sea, who burned like fire and vanished in the storm. When she was a child, she dreamed of wings and flame, of a woman's voice calling her name across endless skies. Now, at the edge of the known world, that voice had returned. It had begun as a whisper in her sleep, growing stronger with each passing night. "Come east," it said. "The fire remembers." So she had ridden from the Vale, alone, following the call through cold and wind until her strength waned. By dusk, the storm had deepened to a blinding fury. The road vanished beneath her horse's hooves. She pressed on, though her limbs were numb and her lungs burned with frost. When at last she thought she could go no farther, the clouds above her parted, and a faint red light gleamed upon the snow ahead. It was not fire as she knew it, not the warm, living glow of a hearth, but a pulse that seemed to come from beneath the earth itself. Arya dismounted and stumbled forward, drawn by that light. The snow steamed where it touched the ground, melting into black water. Beneath her boots, the stone trembled. Then she saw it, a great arch of rock half buried in the ice, carved with the faint shapes of dragons whose eyes glowed like coals. A doorway to somewhere older than men's memory. Her heart pounded. The whisper returned, clearer than before. "You are not alone, child. Blood remembers blood." She stepped through. The passage led downward into heat and shadow. The air shimmered, and her breath came easier with each step. Soon the walls began to gleam with veins of red glass, pulsing faintly as if alive. She emerged into a cavern vast as a cathedral. The floor was smooth obsidian, and the air burned with the scent of smoke and salt. At its center rose a mound of stone, and atop it, a single black shard the size of a man's heart. It glowed from within, silver fire threading through crimson veins. Arya approached slowly, her hand trembling. She knew it before she touched it. The shard, the same that had bound Rhaena Targaryen to her dragon, the same that Harwin Hill had carried across the world, the same that had vanished into the sea with Sir Corin's storm. When her fingers brushed it, pain seared through her body, not pain of flesh, but of memory. She saw visions not her own, a woman standing before a wall of flame, a dragon's wings stretching across the heavens, a knight kneeling in the ashes. She saw Valyria in its glory and its doom. She saw a child carried upon waves of fire, sleeping in a cradle of smoke. And she heard the voice that had haunted her dreams. At last, it said, "You are come." The blood endures. The air around her blazed. The shard pulsed brighter, and from the fire rose a shape, tall, robed in light, with hair like molten silver and eyes of molten gold. Rhaena. Her face was both young and ancient, her gaze sorrowful yet fierce. "You are her," Arya whispered. "You are the burning queen." "I was," the spirit said, her voice echoing like wind through flame. "Now I am only what remains. You are the flame reborn, the last of my line." Arya fell to her knees. "What do you want of me?" "To remember," said Rhaena. "To guard what I gave my life to tame. The world grows cold, child. When darkness comes again, only the fire will stand against it. You must guide it, as I once did." The cavern shook. Cracks split the floor, and through them poured streams of light, not red, but silver, bright as moonfire. Arya looked up. "The dragon?" Rhaena's form wavered, her voice fading like a dying flame. "It sleeps still, beneath the sea. When the stars turn black and the ice swallows the south, it will rise again. Be ready." Then she was gone. The shard flared once more and shattered, sending a rush of heat through the chamber. Arya staggered backward as the fire swirled around her, wrapping her in light. When it faded, she stood alone in the dark, but she was no longer the same. Her blood burned like molten gold, and when she exhaled, a wisp of smoke curled from her lips. By dawn, the storm had broken. The snow melted from the mountain slopes, leaving steam rising into the pale sky. Arya rode down from the pass with the sun behind her and the scent of fire in her hair. Far to the south, in the heart of the sea, something vast stirred beneath the waves. Scales of silver, eyes of gold, wings stretching through darkness. The dragon dreamed of flight, and in that dream, a girl's voice answered from afar. The world was cold again, but the fire was waking. The house of the dragon, long broken, had not perished after all. It had simply waited.